Hey everyone, it's me, back again with an Orville Season 3 New Horizons off-the-cuff video. You may have noticed I'm not doing my normal thing. I'm on the road for work, so this is going to be a brief off-the-cuff type of first reaction, and most likely I won't be able to film a real episode until after the next episode airs, as I won't be home until then. So I am alive. I am feeling a little under the weather, so you might notice my voice is a little off. But I wanted to give my thoughts on this newest episode, Episode 8, Midnight Blue of the Orville Season 3. And this takes place basically following up on events we've seen earlier this season and prior seasons. So it combines the Topa storyline from earlier on, the transition from male to female back to female, or no, female to male back to female, as well as the female sanctuary run by Havina and her vast love for Dolly Parton. So if any of you were watching back in season 1 and season 2 when these events happened and you thought they might actually bring Dolly Parton onto the show, you would be correct. They brought her in on the environmental simulator, the illegally distinct from holodeck, and it was a great scene. I liked it. The music was great. I never knew before this episode that a Renaissance Fair edition of Jolene would be so beautiful, but now that's all I want in my life. The acting was great. Bordas has been conspicuously, I don't want to say absent this season, but even in the episodes that should have featured Bordas heavily, he's been sort of relegated to second tier character. This episode, he had a lot more to do. He acted the hell out of his scenes, and I think that was a great place to basically leave what I think is the crux of the follow-up storylines for the interpersonal conflicts and the interpersonal relationships for this season. We've got episode 9 and 10 left, and I think those are primarily going to be dealing with the Kaylon threat post all the things that have happened in this season. Those are just my thoughts. Maybe they won't be implicated in these next couple of episodes. Maybe there actually will be more interpersonal stories, but I think they were trying to wrap up as many loose ends as they could for fear of not getting anything after season 3, and they want to go out with a bang with this whole Kaylon threat they've been building up since the beginning. So if that's what they're actually going to do, and we don't get that renewal notice from Hulu at San Diego Comic-Con this weekend, I don't know when we're going to get it. So I hope they get renewed. But if they don't, I feel like that's why they're trying to wrap up and get as many of these stories pushed forward as they could. Something that I thought was a little early and a little unearned was the whole Clyden coming back into the picture, and I feel like that was also probably in service of the fact that they don't know if they're getting another season, and they really couldn't have waited till season 4 to escalate this to the next level. And I think they also want to kind of break the Union down to its barest pieces before the Kaylon threat really comes to a head. So the Krill Treaty broke down. The Moclans have now left the Union. There's a potential Moclan civil war going on. So this is the weakest point we've seen the Union since we began this show. And I think that's what they wanted to do. My thoughts are if they go into a season 4, it's going to be something like the Orville Planetary Reunion, where they're going to try and rebuild the Union from the scraps left after the Kaylon massacre or whatever happens with the Kaylon. I think they're going to be able to possibly rehabilitate some of the Kaylon. I'm thinking what's going to happen, and this is just me spitballing, is they're going to use the technology from that last episode of basically imparting empathy on some of the original Kaylon to turn them over to a more moral side. However, it was shown that newer designs of Kaylon are incompatible with this. So Isaac, being at least a second generation, if not later version of Kaylon, cannot handle that long term. So his processing reverts to its original programming after a few moments, meaning if they were to give some sort of virus of empathy to all the Kaylon, all the original models would retain that, and all the newer models would revert back to their more cold, dead, and I almost said animalistic, machine-like temperaments. So I think that might split them and have some sort of Kaylon civil war going on. I think that's what's going to happen, and that, at the end of the day, is going to be what leads us to have a victory, but at a severe cost. I also think the whole Moclan civil war, the Krill breaking off, the spider creatures being part of Claire's ex-lover. I think all those things are going to come back into play with what goes on with the Kaylon threat. And I think that these seeds are being planted well throughout the season. I only wish that they knew they were going to have at least another season, so they didn't have to really, I don't want to say cram in, but fast track a lot of these plots. Because I think if a lot of these plots had more time to linger over a season and come back in season 4 or season 5 instead of being set up in episode 2 and then having to come back into play in episode 5, that being the nature of the new world of television that we have, where nothing's guaranteed. We don't get 24 episode seasons anymore. You don't get a guarantee of 3 or 4 seasons at a time anymore. So it's really, if you want something to come back into a play, if you want a storyline to reach a certain conclusion and a certain end without being canceled before you reach that point, you have to kind of plan it out and bring it back into play as soon as possible. Other things about the episode, the Firefly-like things, I can't remember, Luminites, I think they were called on the planet. They reminded me a hell of a lot of the Speed Force particles from the season finale of The Flash this year, except for they looked a little better, and that's saying something because, I don't know if it's saying something, but they looked terrible on The Flash. They looked a little better here, but this was just kind of a throwaway thing. That was The Flash's big end game, their big balls to the wall budget at the end of the season. So I think that if you compare those things, you can see the very, very sophisticated budget of the Orville, and then they can just throw something like that at the wall like it's nothing. The scenes with the effects, the special effects, the planet that the Moclan female is on was beautiful. The nebula or whatever sort of space anomaly that the Orville was in was just gorgeous, especially combined with that Dolly Parton song when Havina walked in to talk to Ed and he turned around and looked at her with that whole gaseous nebula in the background. That was a beautiful shot. They've definitely had a lot of time this season to add on to those special effects for filming for 2.5, 3 years during the whole COVID shutdown without having to really worry about stuff. They just could keep improving and editing and adding on to these effects, and it really has paid off. Well, there goes the screen, so sorry about that. But I think it was a great episode. I've seen, again, a lot of people are having problems with the social issues being thrown into these episodes, but my bottom line is, for shows like this, especially if it's a Star Trek or Orville, since they're kind of in the same ballpark, they're always using social issues in this way. Not every single episode, not every single story is going to have these elements, but it all boils down to, is it an enjoyable episode of TV, regardless of all the other stuff? And I think it was. It hit a lot of high notes, it hit a lot of low notes, and by low notes, I don't mean like bad things, I mean emotional low moments. The whole possible burgeoning, I don't want to say love story, but familial respect between Bortus and Kelly was great. The redemption of Clyden, while I think a little rushed and possibly not realistic, was fun to see. I personally think the only way Clyden could really be redeemed at this point is to die, or at least think he's going to die in service of saving Topa. That still could happen. That remains to be seen. It's possible that will come into play later. What other story elements? Havina kind of I liked Havina in her first appearance. I didn't hate her here either, but her whole attempt to, make Topa join her underground railroad, for lack of a better term, to coerce her into doing something that was this dangerous. I feel that was a little, it definitely left a bad taste in my mouth. Maybe it was supposed to. As I've said, there's a lot of undertones in this season, particularly, that show the Union, even though this wasn't necessarily a Union situation, in a less than flattering light. And I think that might be something people are missing, or whether or not it's intended or not, but they're not necessarily the pinnacle, the beacon of perfection that they like to think they are. I think there are some downsides, there are some flaws, there are some problems in the Union, and that's becoming evident throughout some of these situations. So maybe with the Kalon teardown that's coming later on in the season, when they rebuild the Union at the end of that in a possible season 4 planetary reunion, if you hear that, Seth, I think that would be a cool title for something. Planetary reunion has to be something. I don't know. Soviet reunion, planetary reunion. Somebody's got to use it. Anywho, I think if they were to build back the Union, taking a more homogenize, well, maybe that's not the right term, kind of integrating all the societies more equally than the way it is at this current point might lead to a stronger and better union for the future. Anywho, these are just some rambling thoughts while I'm here. I haven't been able to film a real episode. I'll probably have some time to do that probably next weekend, but I can't guarantee that right now. Loved this episode. This season is fast coming to an end, and I really hope we get that renewal notice soon. But that remains to be seen. If this is truly going to be the last we see of the Orville, at least they're going out with a bang on their A game, so we'll have some fun stuff to watch back and back and back in the future. And here's the thing, at least it's not suffering the Firefly fate. We've got 3 seasons, and that's a lot. We've got the comics, we've got the audio novel that just came out, so there's a good amount of Orville stuff. Even if we don't get any more, I really think we should, but we'll have to see. So until next time, do all those YouTube things, like, share, subscribe, tell me what you think in the comments below. And I'm not going to be able to edit this, so you're going to watch me lean in and turn it off right now. Until next time, keep living your lives.